Hey everyone, thanks for tuning in. Steven here with Team Euphoric, and this is day 8 of the 80 Days to Your Dream Body course. Today's protein source is going to be beef short ribs, and today's workout routine is going to be a legs and abs training routine. And right now, I'm going to be taking you through the strength training anatomy and explaining which muscles are involved during each of the exercises. Now, let's get started. And now it is time for the main portion of the workout. And for the first exercise, we are going to pick a squat pattern. Myself, I'm going to be doing a high heel elevated barbell back squat. You can do whatever you want, but with the high heel elevated barbell back squat, it's also known as a cyclist squat. And I'm going to be doing a narrow stance with the heels with the toes pointed out. So by doing that, I'm really going to hammer home the quads and specifically the vastus medialis. Now we are going to go over the anatomy of what exactly is involved with the squat. First, we're going to start at the lumbar spine and then work our way down. At the lumbar spine, we are focusing on lumbar extension. Because we are doing lumbar extension, that means that primarily we are going to be focusing on the erector spinae group. So from lateral to medial, that is going to be the iliocostalis, longissimus, and the spinalis. Then we are also going to be training the multifidus, the quadratus lumborum, and the interspinalis. Again, the quadratus lumborum, a very, very important spinal stabilizer. So if you have anybody with low back pain, or if you yourself have low back pain, you don't want to avoid doing squats. Rather, what you want to do is learn how to squat properly. That way you can engage all of those great spinal stabilizer muscles so that you can eliminate your low back pain. The next thing that we're going to do is move down to the hips. So at the hip, we are focusing on hip extension. When we do hip extension, primarily that is going to be the gluteus maximus. That's your main hip extensor. And then we're also going to be training 3 out of the 4 hamstrings muscles. So we've got the semimembranosus, the semitendinosus, and the long head of the biceps femoris, because that is the only one that crosses the hip. The short head, it only crosses the knee. Moving on from there, we are also going to be training the posterior fibers of the adductor magnus, because that is also responsible for hip extension. And to a lesser extent, we are going to be getting some assistance from the posterior fibers of both the gluteus medius and minimus. Then moving down from the hip to the knee, we are focusing on knee extension. Because we are doing knee extension, that's going to be the quadriceps group. So we're getting the vastus medialis, the vastus intermedius, vastus lateralis, and the rectus femoris. But again, because I'm doing the high heel elevated barbell back squat with the toes pointed out in the narrow stance, it's going to primarily be the vastus medialis. And then lastly, moving down to the ankles, we've got the gastrocnemius, because we are doing ankle plantar flexion. So we've got the gastrocnemius, the soleus, the plantaris, the tibialis posterior, the flexor hallucis longus, the flexor digitorum longus, and the peroneus longus and brevis. In 3, 2, 1, down, 2, 3, hold, 1, hold. And now it is time to move on to the second exercise in the lower body portion of the workout. And for the second exercise, we want to pick an exercise that is going to focus on the bending or hip hinging pattern. For myself, I'm going to be doing the Romanian barbell deadlift. Now we are going to move on to the anatomy involved in the Romanian barbell deadlift. We're going to start at the trunk. At the trunk, we're doing the same thing as the barbell back squat. It is responsible for lumbar extension. Because we're doing lumbar extension, we're training the same muscles. That's going to be the erector spinae group. So from lateral to medial, we have the iliocostalis, longissimus, and the spinalis. We are also going to be training the multifidus, the quadratus lumborum, and the interspinalis. The quadratus lumborum, again, a very important spinal stabilizer. So if you have low back pain, or if you have any patients or clients with low back pain, I would not avoid doing bending or hip hinging with them. What you would want to do is teach them how to do it properly so they could strengthen those muscles and minimize or eliminate their low back pain. Then moving down from the lumbar spine, what's going on at the hip? At the hip, we are doing the same thing as the squat. We're doing hip extension. So because we're doing hip extension, we're training the same muscles once again. Primarily, that's going to be the gluteus maximus. That's going to be your main hip extensor. And we're also training 3 out of the 4 hamstrings muscles. So we have the semimembranosus, the semitendinosus, and the long head of the biceps femoris. Only the long head, because that's the only one that crosses the hip. The short head only crosses the knee. We are also going to be training the posterior fibers of the adductor magnus, and we are going to be getting some assistance from the posterior fibers of both the gluteus medius and minimus. Then moving down to the knee, even though we are not doing knee flexion, we are isometrically going to be training the knee flexors. So some of the muscles that are going to be involved in that are going to be the hamstrings group, all of them. We got the semimembranosus, tendinosus, and both the long and short head of the biceps femoris. We're also going to be training the gracilis, the sartorius, the gastrocnemius, because aside from being a plantar flexor, it also crosses the knee, so it is going to be responsible for knee flexion. And also the popliteus and the plantaris is going to assist in knee flexion. Then moving down from there at the ankle, we are doing ankle plantar flexion. And once again, we are isometrically going to be training the plantar flexors. So that is going to be the gastrocnemius, the soleus, the plantaris, the tibialis posterior, the flexor hallucis longus, the flexor digitorum longus, and the peroneus longus and brevis. In 3, 2, 1, down, 2, 3, hold, 1, hold. And now it is time to move on to the third exercise. For the third exercise, we are going to pick an abdominal exercise. And since last week I ended up doing the low pulley cable pull-in, this week I'm going to be doing a high pulley cable crunch. With regard to the actual anatomy of what's being trained, well, we are doing two things. We are doing trunk flexion, and in maintaining that position, we are statically training the hip flexors. So when we are training trunk flexion, which muscles are going to be involved? Primarily, we are going to be training the rectus abdominis, the external oblique, internal oblique, and the psoas major is going to assist in trunk flexion. Next, we are going to move down to the hip. At the hip, the iliopsoas is going to be involved. That is going to be the psoas major and the iliacus. We are also going to be getting some recruitment from the rectus femoris, the sartorius, the tensor fasciae lati muscle, the pectineus, the adductor longus, and the adductor brevis. And those are all of the muscles that are going to be involved in hip flexion. In 3, 2, 1, 1. Hold, 1, 2, 3, hold. Thanks for sticking around until the end of the video. Be sure to like, share, and leave a comment as it'll help the algorithm. And if you enjoyed the content, show your support by subscribing to the channel by clicking on the icon in the bottom right corner. And if you really want to show your support, then consider becoming a member by clicking on the icon in the bottom left corner. These new high-quality videos aren't cheap to edit, and the $5 membership will really help with the video editing budget. You'll also get access to a ton of exclusive perks like early access to videos and this program design lecture playlist in the top right-hand corner. And if you want to learn how to do a one-armed pull-up, then check out the playlist on the top left corner.